it was great to be on Star Trek, but come on, I'm an adult actor. I want to do adult things. And that was when I was a kid. In fact, and I wrote about this, my brother and I wrote a book called The Boys, a memoir of Hollywood and family. I'm not sure if it got a release worldwide, but it certainly is available on the internet through Barnes and Noble and the various places that sell books. But Ron and I wrote a book about our childhood experiences and throughout our careers, starting when I was little, and of course Ron started when he was 3 years old. But there's a chapter in the book about my experiences working on Star Trek, and my memories included my perception of what legacy was. Because when I was about 17 years old, I had a chance to audition for the role of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars.
Wow.
It was way before there was videotape. If they wanted to see if an actor might be right, the only way they could see would be as if they called him in for an audition. And 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, they were auditioning hundreds of actors, maybe not hundreds, but a lot of actors. And when I went in one particular day, there must have been 30 or 40 actors out there in this big waiting area outside at 20th Century Fox Studios. And I remember Mark Hamill was like behind me. Mark was might be a year older than me, but we used to kind of audition together, various projects. He was a kid actor. So I saw Mark Hamill, and I was getting ready to go in and audition for this cool Star Wars movie. Didn't know much about it. I was playing this character, and I learned my lines, and I was going to go in and audition. And I went into the room, and Francis Coppola was sitting in the room. He's a confidant of George Lucas's, and Francis had already made his mark in the world. And I was blown away that Francis Coppola's in the room. And I looked around, and there was another guy that I recognized, a guy named Gino Havens, and then another guy, a guy that happened to be a casting associate on the Andy Griffith Show, but a guy that was a confidant of George Lucas, a guy named Fred Roos. He was in this room. Now, I didn't see George at the time. And the reason why I know this cast of characters is my brother Ron had been in American Graffiti. So I kind of knew about George, and I knew about the way they did graffiti, and it was really exciting. And I was, that made even going on this audition more exciting for me. I'm in the room, and I don't see George. George is actually turned around in a big leather chair. And when I come into the room after a beat, he swings around and he looks at me and he goes, "Commander Baylock, Corbomite maneuver." And in my head, I'm going, "George, get an effing life." That was an old science fiction television show that and here's the real thing. Here's the personal ego bruise. He's bringing up something I did when I was a baby. And when I was 17 years old, I was trying to get an adult role. I was trying to get an adult job. I was getting ready to step out into the adult world. And here is this man that I respected in a room with Francis Coppola. And the first thing that the director says is he does a throwback of me when I was an baby, And so obviously I didn't get the role. I wasn't bitter. In past years, I've mentioned it to George, what happened. He doesn't have any memories of those casting sessions, really. I mean, he saw hundreds of people. But what caught his eye was that I participated on Star Trek. And when I hit about 45 or 50 years old, I realized that scenario of people looking me in the eye and going, "My God, you were Commander Baylock in the Corbomite maneuver." I mean, Jesus, it means something to them. And it clicked for me that, my God, I should be friggin' grateful, because if I'm not, it makes me come off like a real a-hole. And I'm not an a-hole. I'm a very grateful, humble person. And what it's led to has been fantastic, because I get to have conversations about it now. I get to appreciate it. I get to ask these people questions, I've gone to Star Trek conventions and had many doctors. People hand me their business card, and they got doctorates, and they're mission leaders at NASA, flight directors at NASA, scientists at NASA. I mean, the Star Trek, the fandom at Star Trek is pretty high level.
Very diverse, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So anyway, and I probably, you're going to ask this question or at least talk about it. I've been in Star Trek. I was in Deep Space Nine. I was in Enterprise. I was in Discovery, and there's a new series called Strange New Worlds that at this point, unless I got conked in the head and I don't know what I'm talking about, I worked on the show. So coming up in a brief time, I will have been in, what is that? My fifth Star Trek incarnation. And my God, what a feather. I mean, I'll take it.